Bobby mentioned we got a little storm coming in. Little clouds coming in already, coming through and way over here. So by tomorrow, we should be able to handle this 60-mile-an-hour winds. That shouldn't be too bad for us down here, unless we get caught on one of them gusts and sits on top of you for a couple hours and floods the city. The good news is it may slow down some of the protests and rioting and burning. Bobby mentioned a little bit about that. I just heard is it Milwaukee? That's the right city? Minneapolis. All morning long I've been saying Milwaukee. Every time I say it, I want a beer, yeah. All that stuff driving, drinking. They estimated already, this is just the beginning, $55 million worth of damage. One city. That sure fixed the problem, didn't it? When God says we're going to be living in that lawless age, we're there. We are definitely there. It is getting bizarre. I mean, more and more bizarre. I mean, I'm sitting here trying to put stuff together, and no sooner than you finish this, it has morphed into a new problem. So, wow, that's the spirit of disobedience that God talks about. And I pray, and everybody online, I pray that you pay attention, because I don't care where you stand in this. God's holy word is going to come to pass. And this kind of stuff that's beginning now, this is just the foundation of what's going to be building on time to come. And I got to tell you, I know I'm drifting in the middle here. I'm not going to be doing all of this in a sermon. But what terrifies people is when I'm watching some of the video clips, and they're only playing them primarily on Fox, maybe a couple of internet networks. The other networks, all the liberal mainstream networks, are not playing the viciousness of the attacks on innocent people right now. I watched a man who tried to help a woman who got knocked off her car or bicycle, and they beat him to a pulp. And it's like the bloodshed is like the violence of the mob. We need to pay much attention to what's coming. It ain't going to get better. It's going to get worse as time goes. There'll be some calm times, because like we said, in roaring seas, it's going to happen. It's going to slow down. It's happening. And eventually it's going to come to the point where God talks about they're going to call for anybody to bring peace and stability, and in will roam in that beast, and a false prophet who's going to be taking care of everything. But anyway, that's just something else I wanted to just bring out, because it just permeates your mind. And God talks about the wearing down of the saints. You can begin to see what's going on. I want to mention also that hopefully our stream is working today. Cox Cable came out and found out the problem was a network problem in the entire area. So they supposedly had it fixed. We looked at our stream today. It looked like the speed is up. So hopefully it'll finally work after 3 weeks. Then I get a call this morning, the power is out in the building. I said, oh man, Satan will not let us get a message out. Anyway, they got it working again, so God willing, we'll try today. One last announcement from Michigan is for those of you who tune in who know Don Grimes. The deacon in that area, he passed away last night or early this morning. Yeah, he had been sick for a while, and just a gentle, loving, kind soul. So anyway, just pray for all those people, his family up there, his son, who would be bringing him to church all the time, and for all the members up that way. One last thing is the mail. So if you're tuning in and you're from overseas, the mail's not going out. I didn't know it. I mean, I guess mail got COVID also. I don't know. It's all coming back. It's against the law to mail overseas stuff now because of COVID-19, believe it or not. Only a few countries can get it. I think Canada and Australia, but most of the other countries will not let the mail go out. So everything we have sent out, we're getting piles of DVDs and literature coming back to us. They're going to give us credit for it, but so if you're waiting for your material you've been requesting, you're not going to get it right now. And I don't know how long that's going to go on, but that was crazy. They didn't tell nobody that was going on. Now, to get us out of the bad stuff, the good stuff. This is Danny's from the board. Hot off the presses. He told me the other day, he said he went to the paint store to get some thinner. He said it didn't work. Think about that one. Didn't work for me either. There it is, it's sinking in. There you go. He says the older I get, the earlier it gets late. I like that one. Yeah. If each day is a gift, can I get a refund on the ones that went bad? That's funny. Yeah, it really is. Huh? And this one I wasn't going to say, but since he's got a drinking problem, I'm going to mention this one. He's laughing over it. He's sending an order to go buy him a drink. Red Bull. Because we work him so hard, he's got to get some energy up. All right, here goes. It's time to break out my 25-piece patio set. 1 chair and a case of beer. Somebody back there laughing. That hit home. I can see it, yeah. Last one. Don't worry about getting older. You're going to still do some stupid, dumb stuff, only slower. Feels better to laugh a little bit before you get into a sermon. Well, anyway, welcome. I'm glad everyone's here today. I'm glad you're online, that you're joining us on part. Today I'm going to talk about the coming age of conspiracies and false prophecies. At least I'm going to try to. I'm going to try to get through this. I realize there's a lot of information about this, but I didn't want to go into a multi-part sermon. I just really want to give the foundation because we're moving into a time that, I don't know about you, but my email box and stuff people send to me, it's crazy stuff that people are actually looking into. They're thinking it's real, a lot of it, and they're scared. Some of them, people are really getting scared about a lot of things. So anyway, I wanted to bring out some information about that today. So here's what God says, and I'm going to begin right here. The Lord spoke to me with a strong hand, saying, do not say a conspiracy concerning all that this people call a conspiracy, nor be afraid of their threats, nor be troubled. And that comes from Isaiah. It's verses 11 and 12. Now, when we think of conspiracies today, and you read what the Bible is saying, whether you realize it or not, we're not talking in the same context. The Bible is literally referring to something totally different, but the application does apply regardless. So I'm going to talk about that today as we go through that. Conspiracies and false prophecies. Let's start with the false prophecies because they're easier to recognize for most people. In the church, they're becoming less and less realized as people take on more understanding of information and foundations that's not biblically built. I'm going to talk about that as we go through that. So what do I mean by that? That means that if you take some information where a person will take a verse and they will look at that one verse and they say, well, this is what it means, without understanding the rest of the context of the chapter or the rest of the scriptures that support that scripture, whether it does or not, then you've got a problem. So when they take that, it could mean what people say, well, you can make the Bible say almost anything you want to make it say. And you really can if you take things out of context. Matthew 24, verse 5 says, for many shall come in my name, saying that I am Christ, and shall deceive many. Quite often we think about that's for people who are outside the church, and we don't think about for those who are inside the church. Why? Because we're the called out ones. And how could we be deceived? The point that Matthew was bringing out here, that Jesus Christ talked to him, was talking to the disciples who were the called out ones. So basically what we need to understand that a lot of the information the Bible has is not for those who are outside the realm of the understanding of the truth. It's for those who are inside the realm of the understanding. 2 Timothy 4 says, for the time will come where they will not endure sound doctrine, but afterward their own lust they shall heap to themselves teachers having itchy ears. People will write to me about, they'll have a problem with a message or a sermon or something that I say that kind of gets under their goat. And then they will write to me and blow off the steam and try to get me to understand where they're coming from. And if I don't agree with it, I get all kind of hate mail. It's like, this is crazy. You can't disagree with people. Now, we look at the news and we see the people out in the public where you have a conservative and a Democrat, and you see where they can't get along and talk because there's so much hate goes on. But it's actually filtering its way within the church itself of people who don't agree. And just past week with the sermon I gave on Pentecost, simply giving out what we believe in and we understand, somebody says, save your stamp, don't send me any more literature. Because I didn't agree with his point of view that he sent to me. And so I said, well, okay, I can certainly do that. And so I said, it's really sad that people feel that way. that you can't understand to at least disagree. And many of God's understandings and scriptures that we're going to go through, you're not going to get a clear understanding today. I've sat through many ministerial conferences and meetings where I've seen arguments within the ministry themselves where they can't agree on something about prophecy or end time that we'll never know completely until Christ returns, and get into arguments over it. For example, let me just give you one example. In Revelation, there's talking about the second resurrection, then there's a great white throne judgment. But the church has always taught that there were basically 3 resurrections. Those who are called in this lifetime, who are resurrected and part with Jesus Christ when he comes. Then it's very clear in Revelation 20, he says, then after the 1,000 years are finished, the rest of the dead live not again. So we know for sure there's at least 2. But then it goes on in the same context going through there, and then it goes into the great white throne judgment. So then what the church has understood, that was a last or a final resurrection or a third resurrection. And I've seen people get into arguments over this. And at one conference, I finally got up and stood and said, listen, this is enough. I said, let's put this aside. You want to believe 3? Believe 3. You want to believe 2? Believe 2. I said, I got a feeling by the time Jesus Christ comes, when that happens 1,000 years later, we can have a pretty good feeling about what's going to take place. So then you can take and point out both sides of the picture and let everybody understand where you're coming from and make a solid case on either point. And you can put it aside. We can all get together and go down the road. Some things you're not going to get a clear picture because the Bible is open-ended. But today that doesn't happen. When people in churches that are out there, they disagree, they break up, now you got another little group over there. And so you start with a group, a certain amount of people who love one another, get into an argument, now there's 2 groups. Then that group can't get along with each other, so then there's 3 groups and 4 groups, and on and on and on. And what's really sad is that we're living in a time that God says the love of many is going to wax cold. So how do you go from the point of loving one another and being together, sometimes, many times, 10, 15, 20 years, get into an argument that knows you can no longer talk to that person? There's at least one church that says that if you're not in this church, you cannot talk to anybody else in those churches, even if they're in your same personal family. It's amazing, but that's true, and that's what's been going on in the church. And that spirit has got to stop. And it won't stop till everybody comes to the same point of mind. They shall, after their own lust, heap to themselves teachers. And there are people who will listen to a sermon. I don't like the way that guy talks. I'm going to go listen to him. And most people I listen to, I can really get something out of it. Even if it's somebody bad, I can still get something out of it. So now let's go on. And they shall turn away their ears from the truth. All right, that's the ultimate bottom line where things go. When people can't get along, they give up on the truth in many cases. And I want to tell everybody this, is that over the years, the church has been wrong on a lot of things. Not normally doctrine, believe it or not. It's how they apply the doctrine. It's how the ministry handles things. But what's happened is people get so mad at the way it was handled, they take it out on God. And they will say, because the way that person has handled things, if that's the way God is, I don't want no part of this. And they turn their back on God, which is a very dangerous thing to go into. So now, let's go into this. We're given an example through the Old Testament from Jeremiah the prophet. So I want to say this. Jeremiah, God has recorded Jeremiah for you and I because he is on the ground, hands-on, and God lets us see the end time, forward-looking, through Jeremiah, who's on the ground. It's like God's reporter. Like if you turned on the news today, it says, this is our reporter on the ground over in Libya, or over here in this whatever the country is, right? Well, this is God's reporter in Jerusalem before the captivity. He's telling us what's going to go on because God says, go tell them what's going to go on. Then Jeremiah records all the things that are taking place. So when God does that, Jeremiah goes in, he warns the people what's coming. We begin to see what happens. They turn on him and they put him in a dungeon and throw him in a dung heap. And say, you're the guy who's bringing us down. Now we need to remember that when you look around the rest of the country and you see all the anger that's out there And they say, that's your fault we're down this way. So let me ask somebody who's down and supposedly had their problems in our, how long does it take to change from one generation to the next to come out of under? Whatever the under is. How many generations does that take? As long as you continue to blame someone else and you don't take up the reins and make better, you're going to have a problem. And you can't call evil good and good evil and think that that's going to fix your problem. For example, taking the lawless, removing the law because you don't like the way they did it, and it's wrong. A lot of times it's wrong. I understand that. I remember when I was a young man, I'm going down to pick up a friend of mine. I'm standing in his wedding as his best man, and they went down on Bourbon Street, and I didn't want to go down there because they were going to have their last fling. I said, that's not for me. I'm not doing it. I'll come pick you up when y'all done. Come call me. So I'm going down on Bourbon Street back then when you can drive down Bourbon Street, and it's bumper to bumper. You can't go nowhere back then. And somebody had a bad day. It was a policeman. So he's telling everybody, move on, move on. He comes banging on my car, breaks my rear view mirror, and shatters the glass. And I was like, what in the world? So I opened the door to get out and said, well, look what you did. Next thing I know, I'm punched upside my face. I got blood everywhere, and I'm thrown up against a wall. So I have a little bit of a feeling what it's like. Well, there was enough witnesses. There's people everywhere for what went on. And it was an amazing story that they didn't know what to do with me after that. Once they hit you, they got to do something with you. So they put me in a pornography shop because there was nowhere else to put me right there, and sat there for hours trying to figure out what do you do with this guy. They can't arrest me because they got all these witnesses. So eventually they called someone else to come pick me up, and they brought me home. And they asked me if I wanted to file charges. And I said I didn't want to file charges. So there I am in a wedding picture the next day. My lips about this big. And it was hard. I saw stars. A few years later, I had a younger brother who's dead now, got in trouble with the law. That same police officer happened to show up at my dad's house. He didn't remember me. I remembered him. And when he came through, I remember the guy's name. I won't even mention it now. And when he came in, he's taking all the report against my brother of what was going on. He's still a juvenile, right? His younger brother. And he looked at me and he says, why are you looking at me like that? I said, you don't remember me, do you? And I told him who I was. And you know, that man remembered it and thanked me profusely for not ruining his career. He said he never did it again. And he said, I'm going to help your brother. Somewhere down the road, we need to understand that what happens to you isn't as important as what you do with it after. And the people today are not going to get out of the problems that they're in until they realize that the solution is in God. It's not in the way man does things or anyone else. I'm telling you all this for a reason. All of this with prophecy, the false prophecies, the lies and everything that's taking place, are going to build into the narrative of what's going to control. Is that wind and rain out there? Yeah. Wow. Hopefully they don't lose power. Man, it's strong out there right now already. Wow. Anyway, it's all of this is going to continue to manifest itself in the end days. Well, I'm going to have to speak louder, just get past that wind out there. That's amazing. God has recorded the end time insight through the book of Jeremiah that we see the conditions through Jeremiah's eyes. So if this would happen to Jeremiah in his day, and he's the prophet to help warn the nation of Israel and then warn the nation of the Judea back at the time, this is going to happen to us in our day today. And you and I are eventually going to find ourselves under the same problem that he was facing in his day. I talked about this back in January of 2019 in the series I was speaking with back then. It was called The Lesser Known Characters of the Bible, Hananiah, the prophet, and Jeremiah. Now, Hananiah was a prophet in his day. He came from the family of prophets, and he actually served in the temple of God before the king himself. Right? I talk about this, and I'm referring now to America in Decline, Part 3, where I'm getting this information that I'm about to share with you now. Jeremiah and his dualities and the types and the similarities are for the elect and the end times. One of the things God has been so merciful to us is to tell us in advance what he's going to do so that we can go back and look. And Jeremiah is in one of those times. We look at the duality of the time. So if we want to know what's going to happen to us today, the conditions and the type of the times we live in today, we go back to see what happened in Jeremiah's day. So you have the former and the latter. And this is what I brought out in this series. And I'm just going to bring this out because I want to get to the prophecy of in the Jeremiah that I'm speaking to. There are three principal points. First is the former and the latter and the spiritual siege on the elect. And why would that have anything to do with that long story I talked to you about, my going off into deep end, talking about the time and the conditions we have in America? Because in this series, we told you back then that America is going under a siege. You are there. What you're looking at in the news, whether you realize it or not, this is a spiritual siege that is encompassing this nation because Satan knows he has but a short time. So everything you see that makes absolutely no sense of all is because it is evil and driven and forced by satanic powers. So I'm asking you, don't pick a right or left side. Pick the side that you see that comes from Scripture. If you can do that, then you will keep a balance and you will find some sanity in your understanding. If not, you're going to find yourselves angry. You're not going to be angry with the world. You're going to be angry with the news. And you know what you're going to be angry with? With each other. With each other. Why? Because you come from different backgrounds. We have an audience here that's split pretty much 50-50 black and white. Everybody's background comes from the same. But God says you must overcome where you came from to come together under his authority, under God's authority. That means it isn't left, it isn't right, it isn't black, it isn't white, it isn't conservative, it isn't liberal. It's the theology that God says of what is right or what is wrong. And you're going to need that in the years ahead. Because I watch people who can't even talk to one another without getting upset anymore. And I'm blessed to be here with this congregation. I was blessed when I grew up. I grew up in the lower 9th Ward. All right, not the lower 9th Ward, Clayton's down in 9th Ward. When I became a lifeguard for the city, the youngest for the city, lifeguard the city ever had, 16 years old, I became the youngest lifeguard in the state. I was the only white lifeguard of 200 lifeguards. So I grew up in the neighborhood. Never had a problem. To this day, I still don't have a problem. Because I understand the way things got supposed to be. And I was blessed being called at a young age. So I began to understand the way things are. 2, just like in the first captivity, it is God's plan to position his elect where they will take care of the flock. This is important. This is incredibly important because in this period of time, if this is the decade that God comes, at the end of this decade, according to the prophecy, at the end of the second day, the third day we dwell in his sight, if that comes to pass on the time that God says, within 10 years, you're going to have so many people coming to the truth, you won't know how to take care of them all. And they're going to come out of all the problems we have. We also talked about at the time, we go back into the times of the 60s. We're there. What else happened in the times in the 60s? Any people remember the Weather Underground? The bombings? Remember all the bombings? Well, get ready. That's going to happen some more. Because they're getting rid of authority. So when you get rid of the authority, they bring in anarchy to run as the authority. And who do you think is going to give them the control then? When they have no civil obedience to live under. I listened to the mayor of New York today say all the people who've been arrested for not participating in the curfew, they're not going to charge them. They're just going to let them go. So then why have a curfew? But they're going to keep the curfew. I said, there's the definition of insanity. So you have a curfew, and if you don't go, we're not going to charge you for not keeping the curfew. All right? That's leadership. That's in New York City. That's the leadership that we're going on to. Unbelievable. 3, God gives us the insight through Jeremiah and the captivity and the fall of the temple. As you go through Jeremiah, we'll cover that in the near future. I hope to get into it in the near future. As you move closer and closer to captivity, you watch the change in the personality of the nation. That's what we're going to see. And we're blessed because we get to see the change of the nations in Europe before World War II. And the parallel is going to be absolutely astounding. And one of the things we're going to talk about really soon, I've been wanting to talk about, and we've talked about during our, we have a meeting after every Tuesday where we sit down and talk about what we're going to discuss, news nuggets and insights. And one of the subjects we haven't gotten into yet because I was waiting for the right time is what Germany called the ministry of propaganda. And I think we're at the time we need to talk about the ministry of propaganda because that's where we're at with the news media today. The news media today. So now, let's get into to Jeremiah. And it came to pass in the same year that the beginning of the reign of Zedekiah, the king of Judah, in the 4th year, in the 5th month, that Hananiah, the son of Azur, the prophet, which was of Gibeon, spoke to me in the house of the Lord, in the presence of the priest and all the people, saying, Thus speaks the Lord of the hosts, the God of Israel, saying, I have broken the yoke of the king of Babylon. So now this is a well-known prophet of the day. No different than you would have the Franklin Graham of today, or some of the other leadership that you have in the churches today. And he will come in and say, God told me this. All right? So this is that situation. Within 2 full years I will bring again into this place all the vessels of the Lord's house that Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, took away from this place and carried them to Babylon. And I will bring again to this place Jeconiah, the son of Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, with all the captives of Judah that went into Babylon, says the Lord, and I will break the yoke of the king of Babylon. Sounds pretty good. If you were somebody in captivity with the Jews at that time, you would say, you'd see the cheers and the roars going up. Wow, we're finally going back home again. But there was a problem. Most of Judah had already been taken captive, and the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, that when Hananiah prophesies that within 2 years they would be restored and back in Judah, you know what the problem was? Jeremiah had just told them they're going to be there for 70 years. For 70 years. So what does that got to do with today? If I go to the streets today, and I go to any one of these liberal cities, and I'm saying that all of these leaders who are in this anarchy are telling you that if you get rid of the police and you get rid of this situation and the government we have, you're going to have peace in your land, and I'm going to say they're lying to you. What do you think they're going to do to me? Unless you repent of your actions, I would tell them, and restore peace and follow God and keep His commandments, you're going to go the way of every other nation and you're going to fall. You say, that's great, let's hear some more. That's what's going to happen. Because God's Word is going to condemn the actions that is taking place today as anarchy and lawlessness. Now, I'm not justifying anyone's actions that are out there, and what happened to the policeman is wrong. But you know, for the first time, there was like 99% of the people agreed and saw that, said, this is wrong. But it doesn't make any difference. Because Satan knows he has but a short time. Now, I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes. But the point is, what I'm telling you is the truth. God is not going to put up with disobedience and anarchy and looting and rioting and burning and murder and killing people to justify injustice. And at the end time, God says, He says, justice is going to cry out in the streets and there's not going to be any. It's just not going to be there. So now, false prophecies in our day. Remember Jim Jones? Wow, how can you forget Jim Jones? My goodness, the People's Temple, November 18th, 1978, almost 1,000 people. 918 people were either killed or committed suicide, including 304 children. Check your brain at the door. Listen to whatever they're telling you. Get swept up in the violence and the evil. This is the end of Satan and his demons. and they're going to capture as many people in this planet as they can capture. How about Marshall Applewhite? That's not as known. Heaven's Gate, remember that one? This one was really bizarre. All right, 39 members committed suicide March 26, 1997. They're all wearing brand new Nikes. You ever notice when they loot stores, they want to loot Nikes? Why is that? I don't understand. I'm not being silly here. I don't understand that. I watched a looter. This is funny. A looter running out with a bunch of stuff, including shoes, and I think they were Nikes. And one of the looters looted him as he left. I'm not making that up. That's true. And he had a whole bunch of boxes. The guy runs over and grabs one of the boxes right out of his arms and took off running. Like I'm too busy to go in a store to loot. I'm just going to take from you when you come out. They waited for the Hale-Bopp comet to get close enough that they would jump off of Earth to the Hale-Bopp comet. And each one was dressed wearing Nike tennis shoes, and each had $5 in their pocket. Was that the fare to get over there? Was that what that was? What do you say? All right. How about this one? Judgment Day. Harold Campy. This is not too many years ago. Harold Campy, the doomsday prophet, wrong again. He predicted beyond a shadow of a doubt, he said, that his May 21st end of the world website stated the Bible has given us an absolute proof the year 2011 is the end of the world during the day of judgment. And this was a big deal. This man was on 140 television and radio stations at one time. This is not small stuff. All right? It was the 17th day of the second month of the biblical calendar day. For whatever reason that was, we have no idea. They spent millions of dollars to get 5,000 roadside ads to announce the day of judgment. That really happened. He had an entire group of people talking about that. Since that time, there have been literally hundreds of would-be internet theologians predicting the end of the world and the return of Jesus Christ. The blood moon tetrads, they came out like honey on a bee, talking about the end of the world. The heavenly signs, because they don't understand Scripture. When Jesus Christ talked to the Pharisees, he says, you err not knowing Scripture. They thought that this was the end of the world. Then, of course, with these moons that's going through, they said, oh, it's the end of the world. And I'm telling you this because we're going to move into the time that's going to surface again. The only reason you don't have it right now, this COVID-19, caught so many people off guard, nobody could predict it. So nobody knew what was going on. So God says in Matthew 24, going on basically where we were. Therefore, if they say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, do not go forth. Is he in secret chambers? Believe it not. So now, wherefore, if they say unto you, all right, so if they, what about they? What are we talking about here? They is plural. So when we look at they, we're talking about a conspiracy. So the Bible says when they call it a conspiracy, this is not the conspiracy that you have to worry about. The conspiracy here, this is spiritual. This is a spirit thing that's going on. That's the conspiracy that God's warning us about that's taking place. Coming together, and this is a conspiracy for coming together for an unlawful act, joined together to conspire. All right, the Bible warns that at the end of the days there would come a confederacy of spirits against God to deceive the elect. So what you're looking at going on right now, the change in the mindset, change in the attitude, the personality of our nation, it's changing. That personality has to change to go after God's elect. Because it's going to change from where things are in civil disobedience to spiritual disobedience. You need to understand that and get that in your mind. If you don't understand that, what's happening today will not make sense. It says, there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that it's possible they shall deceive the very elect. So there are going to be people who are even coming out of the church who are going to be telling you all kinds of things to get you to believe a lie. 2 Thessalonians, God says, we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Christ and by the gathering unto him, that you soon not be shaken in mind, nor be troubled neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as from us, as that day of Christ is at hand. So what are we looking at here? That even in Paul's day, there was a conspiracy going on, even in his day, not long after Christ was crucified. When they said by letter, that means that they had correspondence by distance. That means there was somebody back then who was telling the church, Christ is already coming back. So Paul's saying, listen, if you've heard that as if it's a letter from me, don't believe them. Notice, who do you believe? You got people all over the place telling you all kinds of different things. Today we have Facebook, the internet, and an almost unlimited means to spread information. So let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come unless there come a falling away first. Again, you can't fall away from the truth unless you have the truth. So again, as we start at the beginning, this information, all the warnings that we're seeing here, it isn't for the world. Satan already has them. It's for his people, his called out ones who had the truth won, who are now moving away from the truth. Why? Because they're buying into all of these conspiracy theories and lies that are taking place. The end time conspiracies will appear to be physical in nature. You look at the news today that, I got told the Queen was dead a couple months ago. Did you hear about it? No, I didn't. They said, well, I got a fake Queen in there now. So they, what? They get all these rich people out there taking kids out the way, and they're taking them away, and they're sucking all their blood, and they're living off their blood. What? I don't know if they are or not. I don't believe it, but maybe there's some of that going on. But why would you go into all of that stuff? God says, don't worry about those kind of conspiracies. That's not the stuff you have to be concerned about. Used to think that a lot of things were conspiracies, and come to find out they're not conspiracies. They're really going on. So it's not my point to go into all the different specifics. Look what Ephesians says. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities and the powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So what you're seeing now, we're taking lawlessness in the nation, changing its face, and we're going to take about wickedness and move it into its place and run things. That's what's going on right now. And it's the spirit driving the physical, not the physical driving the spiritual. So let's understand conspiracies. Isaiah 8, verse 12. This is where we started. Say not a confederacy, right? To all them whom this people shall call a confederacy, neither fear that you fear, nor be afraid. All that stuff that's on the internet, all the stuff that's working through, everything you say, oh, look, this is going to be killing all these people. See all those things from the planes, those are chemtrails, we're all going to die from that. God said, listen, don't worry about any of that. Quit worrying about that was what God's saying. The word confederacy we're looking at is conspiracy. It comes from the word 7195, Kishar. It says, this is what the Lord says to me. Now I'm going to read verses 11 through 13 of Isaiah where I was from the NIV. And it's a little bit easier to understand. This is what the Lord says to me with a strong hand upon me, warning me not to follow the way of this people. All the conspiracies and everything that's coming across on the internet, it consumes people's time and the fear, and I get people scared, of all the stuff that's going on. Nonsense. Stop it. You are in God's hands, and that's all you have to worry about at this time. Do what God says to do. All the other stuff, let them have it. There's nothing you can do about it anyway. You realize that? And you know what's even funnier? When you track down the source of all these conspiracies, you can't find one. So where does it start? Who's putting it out? It's like a circle. It goes over here, from here to here. Oh, I heard it over here. And they said, where'd you get it from? Oh, I got it from over there. Where'd he get it from? Oh, we got it from over there. And you can't find the sources of it all. Verse 12. Do not call a conspiracy everything that this people calls a conspiracy. Now, the King James Version uses confederacy. All right, the NIV uses the conspiracy, which is a word that we could all understand better. Do not call a conspiracy everything the people call a conspiracy. So when we look at all this stuff that's coming through on the internet and all the things going on, God says, don't worry about that conspiracy. That's what they call a conspiracy. Don't worry about what they call it. God says, you worry about what I'm telling you is a conspiracy. Because that's not going to harm you. But what God says is a conspiracy will. He says, do not fear what they fear. Do not dread it. The Almighty, the Lord Almighty is the one that you are to regard as holy, and He is the one you ought to fear, and He is the one you ought to dread. Now, if I finish the sermon right now and I stop, that's it. Bottom line, conspiracies, lies, false prophecies, right there. Forget about it all, God says. He says, I'm the one you fear. Remember that. Next time somebody sends you something, there's a conspiracy out there and all these things, they're poisoning water and they're doing this and they're doing all that kind of stuff. God says, look, don't worry about all that. You're in God's hands. There will be coming a time that God says, listen, there's going to be the persecution come on you. Right now, there's not the time. God's be giving you time to build strength. Why? Because He's got an innumerable multitude of people going to come out of tribulation. And He wants us to be ready for Him. And if we're going to be a scared people, biting our fingernails and worry about things that's going to go on, then you're never going to accomplish the job called us for to begin with. All right, going on. He says, do not call a conspiracy everything this people calls a conspiracy. Don't fear what they fear. Do not even dread it, God says. Conspiracies. What comes to mind when you think of conspiracies today? Today. There's no end to the conspiracies from UFOs to... I was going to start naming a bunch of them. And I said, you know what? I don't have enough time. But worse than that, once I start naming them, people who believe the conspiracies, what have I just done? Just like the guy who's last week with Sabian 6 versus what we believe, take me off your mailing list. And that's not my point here. My point is to get beyond where they are to understand what God really wants you at. So whatever the conspiracy is that you believe and think about, God says, look, put it aside. He says, worry about what I'm telling you. Put that stuff out your mind. Conspiracy and conspired comes from basically two Greek words. 7194, which is kashar, or 7195, which is kisher. Right? Both of them have the same basic. One is the act of, and one is actually to conspire. It's to form the unlawful alliance, to conspire a confederacy or treason, joined together and knit together. Now, there are conspiracies going on out in this nation to bring it down that are real. You need to understand that. And you're seeing them manifesting themselves in the public today. We'll talk more about that end of it in News and Nuggets coming up, in the next couple of weeks. Look what Ezekiel says about the conspiracy. It says the original conspiracy. When did conspiracies begin? Actually began with Satan when he was called Lucifer. Lightbringer. By the multitude of your merchandise, they have filled the midst with you with violence. They have sinned. Therefore, I will cast as profane out of the mount of God, and I will destroy you, God says. Look at Revelation. There appeared a wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, 7 crowns upon his heads, and his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven. It did cast them to earth. Satan conspired through the magic of his merchandising and his whispering enchanter, as God calls him, to convert 1/3 of the angels to turn against God. We need to remember that when you think that you're stronger than Satan. Without God's power, you are in a real problem. All right, so here we're looking at this wonder in heaven. So what are we looking at here? The end time talked about in Revelation 13. I stood on the sand of the sea and I saw a beast rise up, and there it is, 7 heads and 10 horns again. And on the 10 horns are the crowns, the names of blasphemy. So what we're looking at in Revelation is an end-time beast power rising up that's going to have the original conspiracy from day one carrying on through today where we live today. Revelation 18 said, he cried with a mighty voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, has become the habitations of devils or demons, and every foul spirit and cage of every unclean and hateful bird. And for all nations have drunk of the wine of her wrath, and her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornications with her, including all the merchants of the earth, which have waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. That is beginning to take place right now, because in this anarchy that is taking place around the world, do you think it's possible that one person's death through an injustice without Satan can upheaval the whole world? You're only beginning to see God removing his protection from this planet. And he's given us a chance to look at what is coming. If a person can't see that, they're not thinking clearly. It is impossible to move an entire planet, billionaires, governments, nations, mayors, governors, kings around the world without something bigger taking place right now. For all nations have drunk of the wine of her wrath. And when you see it all, God says, and all this takes place, this beast is going to rise up. That whispering enchanter. And he will conspire against God to destroy the plan of God. We've been talking about that. It is at our doorstep. And the only reason it didn't happen right now is God allowed COVID to rise up and put this off. Because that is the beast power that was beginning the final push to control the rest of the world. But in the meantime, the anger has destroyed everybody to unite them against the civil powers that be, to bring in an unruly power that he is going to control. And who are they going to blame? The elect. Because they're the ones who are next causing the problem. It will go beyond the physical. If it's the white man who's got the problem, we got to get rid of them. No, it's going to go from human and flesh to spirit. It's those Christians that are out there, those Sabbath keepers who keep God's holy day. They're the ones who are bringing the evil, and they're the ones who we need to bring the green in and resolve it all. We need to get that in your head, because that is the true conspiracy God says you better be concerned about. It isn't the flesh and it isn't the blood. We brought this out last year from 2019. We brought it out and talked about the next step to come with the climate is the Pope is going to bring about the instability of the rest of the world as he re-educates. What are they talking about doing today? Dismantling the police departments and going to build something fresh and something new. Well, that's going to be interesting to find out. Well, who knows what that's going to bring out? And they're going to look for some help. And they're going to get it from the beast power. This was coming in May 14th, and it got put off. Only because of the corona, the CD. I'm not going through all of this because we went through this before. What I'm talking about here is showing you what was coming. At the same time, I'm bringing out, look what else we talked about was going to come. Why do we know that? Because the seals told us and God prophesied it was going to come. We didn't have to worry about the conspiracies of the world. Just go right to the Bible, and the Bible tells you what's coming. Health experts warned that this disease could kill millions worldwide. September 27th, 3 months later, it began to run around the world and hit the whole world by January of 2020. And in that month, we were telling everybody, this is the decade of change. And it's coming. And it was at our doorstep. The world told you it was coming. Nobody paid attention to it. We didn't see what God was allowing to take place. But it is here now, today. Jeremiah. We hadn't left Jeremiah. We're still there. Jeremiah 23 goes on, behold, a whirlwind of the Lord gone forth in fury with a grievous whirlwind, and it shall fall grievously upon the head of the wicked. That is the bottom line what's coming. This world will get what it deserves unless it repents. The anger of the Lord says shall not return until he has executed, until he has performed the thoughts of his heart. In the latter days you can consider it perfectly. So God told us through Jeremiah, through his eyes, while the nation of Judah was falling apart, when the captivity had taken place. And God says, you're not going to understand it till when? To now, today. So when that happens, you're going to understand it perfectly. And we can look at it today and understand it perfectly. Why? Because we have an example of what took place. You're watching it. You're witnessing it. We saw it again take place right before World War II. So we can understand it in our day, the physical, the spiritual that God says is going to take place just before he returns. We need to get that in our head. We need to quit worrying about all that's out there and understand that it has to take place before God comes back. The language God gives us in Jeremiah is like that he used that when he told Daniel the same thing. Go your way till the end of days. We're there. We begin to understand it today. Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up, and they're sealed to the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white, and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly. And none of the wicked shall understand, but the white white. The wise, those who made themselves white with the robes, the wise shall understand. So you can go out there today, and you can preach, and you can prophesy, and you can tell till you're blue in the face. But until God understands and turns their minds and purifies them, and they have washed their robes and become white before the throne of God, there's not a thing you can do to change what's going on. All you're going to do is anger them, just like they did Jeremiah, and say, he's the one who caused our problems. And they picked him up and they threw him in a dung heap. And eventually somebody went to the king and says, if you don't get him out of the dung heap, he's going to die in there. But eventually they brought him out. And God rescued him. And what did he say when he came out? And he told them, unless you repent again, you're going to go into captivity again. And they wouldn't listen to him. And a group of people came to him and said, look, we're going to go to a place of safety. We're not going to have to worry about these Babylonians. And they went to God, and God says, look, you tell them if they flee to Egypt, they're going to die. He says, you need to trust me right where you are. And so we have a church today who have conspired a doctrine that does not exist about going to a place of safety. And they're going to trust it. And I'm telling you, if they don't get a grip on things, they're going to be there, and they're not going to be prepared for what's coming within the church. Now, I know people aren't going to believe me here, but I'm asking you just to listen to it, to think about it. Because God doesn't show. As someone told me just the other day, let me ask you a question. This Steve Counselor says, I never thought of this question. God says he's going to cut time short for the elect's sake, right? Well, if you're in a place of safety, why does he have to cut time short? Right? Never quite asked the question. That's simple. If they're in a place of safety, he could stay there for 5 years if he wanted to. They're in a place of safety. But God says for the elect's sake, he's going to cut time short. If they're all in one spot, gathered, protected, why is he worrying about cutting time short? Make sense? Now, I know people who are in the larger churches who still believe that doctrine are going to live by it and may probably just say, take me off your mailing list. And I'm asking you just please follow Scripture and go back through it again. I remember my mother-in-law was talking to someone in her family. She said, listen, if she put her hand on his arm and said, when it doesn't happen, don't get mad at God. Remember that? When it doesn't happen, don't get mad at God. In other words, God's not going to promise you going to a place of safety. Same chapter, verse 16. Thus says the Lord, hearken not to the words of the prophets that prophesy and to make you vain. That's one of the biggest problems people have in the church and the ministers today. Talk about, man, how great a job you did today. Man, what a wonderful sermon. Patting them on the back. Yep, I did pretty good, didn't I? He says, don't listen to the prophets that prophesy that make you vain, puff you up. I know there's a minister on TV, he got 50,000 people in his audience. He puffing them up every week, how great they are and how wonderful it is. And God's going to make you rich, and this is your time. And all the while, the end time's coming. Like, wow. They speak a vision out of their own heart, out of their own mouth, God says. They win you over with their lies and their flatteries as if it's from God. Hananiah was doing that when he says, within 2 years, you're going back to Jerusalem. And Jeremiah says, you're not going anywhere. He says, plant gardens, build houses, you're stuck right here for 70 years. Put him back in the jail. Going on. Isaiah 30. Speak to us smooth things. You know, a lot of people in the church today, in Church of God, they don't want to hear things of correction. They don't want to hear about prophecy. They don't want to hear about end time. Just tell me how to live. You're scaring our children. So, wow. The root of that word is from Strong's 2505 means a portion, to separate and to divide. You realize that? Smooth things? It isn't keeping things together. It's dividing things. Speak to smooth things. You don't realize that you're dividing things. It's used 40 times in the Bible. It's also translated as flattery 6 times. Flattery 6 times. If you got somebody, especially the preachers, and somebody's always telling them how great you are, you better take a look at what's going on there. Because nobody's that good. I remember somebody says, you're never as good as they tell you you are, and you're never as bad as they tell you you are. All right? Going on. Who say to the seers, do not see, and to the prophets, do not prophesy to us the right things. Speak to us smooth things. Prophesy deceits, the Bible says. He's actually saying, prophesy deceits. The translated word for smooth in the original Hebrew is flattery. Look at Genesis 3, verse 1. Now the serpent, and I got that highlighted, was more cunning than any beast of the field, which the Lord had made. The word is nakash, means smooth spoken. That's what Satan does, he devours. He's also called the Whispering Enchanter. The Whispering Enchanter, who prophesies deceits. Prophesies deceits. That is a conspiracy. You guys, there's conspiracies and false lies. He prophesies through conspiracies. He gets his demons together and he sends them out. It's almost like, I hate to go back into this, but it's like the liberal media. Yeah, do you notice today that no matter what channel, if you go to liberal, like there's a word of the day? They all say the same word of the day, the same sentence, almost word for word of the day. It's almost like there's somewhere that somebody gives them, this is our mantra for today. And they all begin to say it until the audience began to pick it up. And the people in the streets began to use it. It's this conspiracy to go on to accomplish the change of the mindset of the people who once loved one another, who can no longer talk to one another or disagree. Strong's 41:23 says, the Mahathalah, which is only used once, means, the deceit means delusion. That Satan preached the delusion. The conspiracies, 2 Thessalonians 2, we read this before. Then shall that wicked one be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. Lying wonders. All deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish because they have not the love of the truth. Wow, so now you come into an area that gets a little sticky. The love of the truth. How do you know what the truth is? Who do you know who's telling you the truth? Who do you believe the truth? Well, actually, the Bible says, trust no man. You want to go into the Bible itself to prove things for yourselves. So we live in the age of information and technology. It's the time prophesied by Daniel. But you, Daniel, shut the words up and seal the book even to the time of the end, and many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Are we not at that time today? I mean, the knowledge is increasing so fast. With that increased information, we also have false prophecies. So who do you believe? Better yet, what can you believe? You need to go back to your roots and to your foundation. So here's some words of caution as I begin to bring this to a close. 2 Peter 1, it says, knowing this first, that no prophecy is of the Scripture is of any private interpretation. In other words, the problem we have today with people who are on the internet and they're not tied into a church or they want to be independent, God puts people in churches together because iron sharpens iron. You know, we have a policy in our church that the ministry cannot change the doctrine without bringing it first to the ministry to discuss it. In other words, if we believe what we believe, it's because we believe something that's established that. And it's funny, through all the splits and all the churches I've been in, you know it's never changed? A statement of beliefs. Now, we can't all get along and everybody fights with one another and they all split up, but what we believe never changed. So if somebody's coming in with a different doctrine, where's he getting that from? Knows that person believes that God has talked to him or showed him something that no one's ever seen before, and this is the way it's supposed to be, and what you believed is wrong. In fact, one person who wrote me last week wrote me and says, well, I can see you still believe the way Worldwide believes, so take me off your mailing list. Wow. Doesn't mean that everything the Worldwide taught was wrong. They just didn't understand everything yet. What a lot of things they did do was wrong. But the majority of what they did was right. 2 Peter 1 verse 3, according to his divine power has given unto us all things that pertain to life. Now this is important to remember. All things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him that has called us to glory and to virtue. So here's what I mean by that, and why I'm bringing this here, is that if it's important that we should know it, God's already given it to us. I don't need some would-be prophet who's got something off the internet to come tell me everything we're doing is wrong if we already got everything that tells us, gives us pertaining to life. So It's just something. And you'll notice when people do that, they'll come into church groups and they get in the corners and they huddle with people. Did you see this? And it's like they try to get everybody all cornered off into some new belief, some different doctrine or something. And I didn't want to spend a lot of time there, but I just wanted to share that those things happen. In Hebrews 1, God says this, God who at sundry times in diverse manners spoke to us in the past unto the fathers by the prophets. So in the past, God spoke one-on-one, face-to-face with prophets. He said, but in these last days, he's spoken to us through his Son. So how does God do that? Through his Holy Spirit. He also says in the last time they'll dream dreams and they'll have visions. But he doesn't talk to you face-to-face, one-on-one, and by voice, is what they're saying. I'm going to go through and I'll show you what I mean by that. John 1:1, he says, here in Hebrew it says he spoke to us through his Son. John 1:1 says that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All right? Who is the Son? His Son is the Logos, the spokesman. He is the Word. John 1:1 says that. The same was in the beginning with God, and all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. All right? So we know that Jesus Christ, in the last days, talks to us and teaches us through his Son. All right? Through his Son. All right? Hebrews 1:1-9, I'm just going to give you one of the verses. The Apostle Paul gives us the account of those who saw and heard of Christ after his death. So what Paul does, he goes through with I think this is Corinthians. I don't think I changed it. I think this is in Corinthians. Oh, here. So what Paul gives us is an accounting. I think it might be 1 Corinthians 15. Maybe not, but I'll check that later. But check it out when you go back and look at this. He gives you who he saw first after he was resurrected. He said first by Peter, and then he goes through and he lists all the people who saw Christ, and then there was 500 he showed himself at one time. Then Paul says, last of all, he was seen of me. Now, Paul's telling us Paul was the last one to see him in that fashion. Last of all, he says, I'm born out of season. It's like the period of time that Christ was going to be on the earth showing himself to all these people, it was over. But he said, but last of all, he came to me, showed himself to me as if it was out of season, what he said there. So a lot of people who say, well, God, I heard him talk to him, I hear these voices. He said, you want to be very careful. That is of God or not of God. Right? Because the way God says in the last time, he talks to us through his word, through his Spirit, through visions, through dreams, and through his Spirit of understanding, interpreting your mindset of the scripture that he gave us before. In Ephesians 2, for through him we have both access by one Spirit to the Father. Now therefore you are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints of the household of God, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and the prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone. So when you come up with something that you think is a new prophecy or an interpretation of a scripture, God's saying you need to understand that it's going to be built upon the foundation of Jesus Christ and the prophet and the apostles. So you can go back to verify, is this supported from Scripture? If it's not supported from Scripture, you really should put it aside until you have more understanding. Because it is possible that Satan, as a whispering enchanter, may use you to puff you up to say, wow, look at this new information. Look what I just learned. Isn't this incredible? And it may not be truth at all. So you need to go back to God to make sure that what you're understanding is true or not. In whom all the building fitly framed together grows to the holy temple of the Lord. So everything that's been put there is put inside of you as the temple. That's where his Spirit dwells, in the temple of God, that you are the temple of God, so that it fits together. But if it can't fit together and it's taken out of context, now the temple has been disrupted. And if God's not there, you're no more the holy temple. And you're only holy if you have the presence of God. You cannot be holy without God. We cannot make anything holy that God has not made holy. We cannot do that of ourselves. It says, in whom you are also builded together for a habitation of God through the Spirit. So it is God who brings understanding. And yes, God will grant you individually, one-on-one understanding that you never knew before. You don't need me to tell you. God uses you just like he uses me. But it must jointly fit together, built upon the prophets, the Christ, in the past that makes it fit today. So if you got all of a sudden, you get this thought that came through, it's like, wow, I've never seen that before. And it doesn't fit. Let me give you just a wild example. God told me we don't have to keep Sabbath anymore. It's Sunday. Any day is good. You know what I mean? To an audience who keeps the Sabbath, that sounds ridiculous. But to the world, that makes sense. That makes absolute sense. So there we have the age of conspiracies and false prophecy. It can get a little sticky. It can get feelings hurt and feathers ruffled. But the bottom line is, God saying this. He's going to make things plain that pertain to salvation. If there's something out there that's a conspiracy, that's got everybody all worried and scared to death of what's taking place, God says, you don't worry about that. He says, you focus on me, and he will take care of you. Well, anyway, I hope that helps make a little sense and putting some peace in people's minds as we go through there, because you will have, in the years ahead, many, many more conspiracies coming up and many, many more false prophecies as we move closer to Jesus Christ.